actually like to introduce you to our keynote address. I know we kind of placed it in the middle, but we have Satish Dev. He is the Executive Director for Customer Experience in Kantar, Middle East. He's actually, he spearheads customer experience and employee engagement. He has a number of years of experience working in banking, telecom, retail, government, and I know he's worked across the Middle East and Asia and other larger portions. So he comes with a vast amount of knowledge just in terms of covering the EX, the employee experience and the customer experience from a strategic standpoint and from a qualitative, quantitative standpoint. So we're very excited to hear what he has to tell us about enabling and empowering employees to ensure that we provide a delightful customer experience. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you so much. So let me make sure that I ask all the famous questions that everyone asks. Can you see me? Can you hear me? So if one of you can at least pop up and say yes, I shall continue with what I wanted to talk through.
Yes.
All right, thanks so much for the introduction. And it was a real pleasure listening to all the speakers before me and all the panelists. Absolutely, I think this is so important a topic today. So let me, without much ado, jump into the core of my presentation, and then hopefully it gives us enough time for questions, comments, and so on. So what you see on the screen here is effectively, I dare I say that, if we were looking at, sorry, let me just make sure that, could I confirm you're seeing the screen which says brands today face new challenges and opportunities?
No, actually, we don't see your screen shared.
Okay, let me just, sorry, then just go back and start all over again.
Yeah, I think it's coming up now. There we go. We see it.
Okay. Thank you. So this slide that we kind of often use in our presentations, obviously there's one big change from February, maybe even March or April of 2020, in that the fifth column that you see, the COVID impact, of course, didn't exist. Yeah. So I do want to talk about employee experience, of course, but the focus is a lot more on how that impacts customer experience. Now, all of us, whether we are corporate brands, NGOs, government organizations, I think we do face new challenges and new opportunities. I think the first one is, of course, attracting and retaining talent, depending on the market you're in. And I think in the Middle East, we are in markets where there is a young growing population. Of course, with that comes expectations of employment, job opportunities, job satisfaction, and so on. But there are other markets in Europe and other places where there is new talent that they need to attract and come in. Now, so from that perspective, it's very important to not just attract, but obviously to retain talent that's working in your organization. The other thing, of course, is we keep saying digital, but of course the new generations have entirely different mindset and demands. COVID has changed a lot of things. Probably it's made all of us digital a lot more than probably what we envisaged. But this is an important thing because expectations are different in terms of working environment, the technology that we use, the personalized services and development opportunities that each one of us wants. Yeah. The third aspect is the impact of digitization, whether it's on employees or customers. There is a lot happening. And dare I say again, from March of last year, I think it has become even more critical. I was struggling now just with Zoom because I use Microsoft Teams very often. And then there is Zoom, and then there is something else. There's Cisco WebEx. And I think we have all had to adopt a lot to kind of new technologies. Previous speakers and panelists talked about employee onboarding. And yes, whether it is students, I have two kids who are students, or it is employees, these are very different times, right? We are looking at employees who are joining, it is over a Zoom call. They don't come to the physical office. By the way, I'm in office here since June of last year. But there are a lot of employees who join who don't come to the office. And therefore, this entire impact of personal touch, interacting with colleagues, et cetera, is a lot less than what we experienced last year or before that. So it's very important that we don't lose sight of that and try and get a balance between the digital world and the physical world as far as we can do. The fourth pillar, and that's the major link that I'll be doing over the rest of the presentation, is, of course, customer experience is a big differentiator. There is a lot more competitive pressure today for every brand that is out there. Expectations have changed, customer needs have changed. And in this context, employee experience and customer experience need to be fully aligned. And I'll talk a lot more about it. All my experts, speakers, and panelists have talked through all of these issues. I think they were there before, but I think COVID has really magnified the impact of each of those things that you see over there, whether it is health and well-being, work stress, or personal life stress. I add something on financial literacy because we had a session in our office on kind of a bank taking a session on financial literacy. And it is an important thing because a lot of us don't realize that we are, of course, in an expat environment over here in the Middle East for the expats that is there. And it can become a kind of challenge if you have to relocate and go somewhere else, right? Remote working is a thing that's happening. And health and hygiene, whether you talk of inside the house, in shopping malls, inside the office, it's like a huge topic that is there relevant in its own right. Yeah. So from that perspective, I would say many years ago, we used to just ask questions on employee satisfaction, right? I mean, are you satisfied with wherever you work? That's changed a lot because it is not just about asking questions around, are you satisfied with your employer? I think the employee expectations are manifold. They want you to know them. They want you to hear them. And importantly, they want you to value them, right? So employee expectations are a lot more now than ever before. And I think COVID has definitely kind of magnified it. Therefore, having an employer value proposition that resonates with, of course, current employees, but also potential employees, and a lot of you talked about it. How do we attract talent into the organization is quite critical. Yeah. So far, so good. I hope it's all fine, clear. I do get asked this question on how often should we do employee surveys, and I like to put this slide. It's almost like we're saying one a month. So that's the interesting bit. So if you see this slide, and I think, again, a lot of you have talked about it, how we need to, without a doubt, look at employees before they join the organization, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's your corporate website, whether it is we people as brand ambassadors of the employer that we are working for. Potential employees are coming across us in many different shapes and forms, including social media. And therefore, the journey starts well before onboarding. It starts at the application process. Of course, the people talked of day one and onboarding process on day one and beyond. And how do you get these new joiners to feel part of an organization when they're not able to come to the physical organization at time? I think this is a different challenge that we kind of need to address. And then as you go through the entire employee experience journey, of course, you can do, apart from the annual surveys, you could look at doing, get feedback on training. You can get frequent pulse surveys and employee health and well-being, like we have run quite recently. I think this is a very important topic for all the organizations to cover. So you could have small, quick pulse surveys and assess, what do people feel about employee health and well-being? What do people feel about coming to office? Do they feel they're getting enough support from a remote working environment perspective? And this gives you extremely valuable insight in understanding your customer expectations. And it's so critical, right? I know we talked about 70-30 or 30-70. It's a bit up and down today, right? You have cases where going down, the vaccine announcements were made, and we all thought, or at least I thought, that life is going to become more like normal, maybe in the first few months of 2021. But then the cases are going up and down and up again. We have lots of Googling on vaccines, and people are anxious about what to take, what not to take. And therefore, coming to office is not as easy as one thinks it. People use public transport, people are fearful of the health and hygiene across the entire journey. And that becomes an important thing to look at. Yeah. So through the employee joining the organization and being in the organization, looking at things like career growth, training, mentoring, and so on, you could get your employee pulse. And someone also mentioned, of course, it's very important to capture the thoughts of people who are exiting the organization for whatever reason. And this will give you fantastic insights, definitely into what you can, how you can make employees feel more engaged and happier. Yeah. But then my topic was not just about employee engagement. And therefore, what is the link with customer experience, right? So employee engagement obviously is not an end goal in itself. Of course, we all want to be happy. We want employees to be engaged and motivated. But most of us are working in corporates, and therefore the end goal is, of course, to do with business success, right? So from that perspective, a business success has kind of three critical components. One is you, of course, need a very strong brand where you create a very relevant brand promise. And for the CX practitioners out there, of course, you need to deliver this promise. And in fact, not just deliver, but go beyond delivering what customers expect. So this is all about outstanding customer experiences. And in that process, of course, employees play a kind of very key role and critical role in doing it. And therefore, we talk more about a high-performing organization, because employee engagement, like I said, is not an end goal in itself. The end goal is, of course, for business success. And then in that process, we can do what we can do for different employees. Now, there are different models out there. This is something at Kantar we like to use to capture the essence of what customer-centric organizations need to be doing. And we talk about these 6 pillars, right? Does the organization have a kind of clear vision and CX strategy in place? Do they understand the value of good customer experience? What is the impact of CX on business success, on financials? What is the ROI? Do we use it as a measure of business success through the organization? Is there good governance in place through leadership engagement and sponsorship and governance structure? Do we have the right tools and data to map customer feedback, integrate it with our kind of internal CRM systems, with our operational and financial data? Do we have the right processes to respond to feedback, to learn from the customer feedback, optimize and have new services, knowledge sharing, and so on? Yeah. But the 6th pillar is people, which is where the link comes in. People is really kind of a core component, obviously, of these 6 pillars that you see on the screen. And within that, it's not just about employee engagement, but it's about employees feeling that they have the authority to make change. Do they feel empowered to deliver to customer experience? Do they get the right guidance from their managers? Do they get good feedback from managers and rest of the organizations? And does the organized support employee experience and customer experience with the right rewards and recognition process. Yeah. So there are quite a few things that, of course, a CX-centric organization needs to do, but clearly people is a supremely critical component of it. Now, what we also realize is that, of course, you want employees to be engaged, happy. You want them to be motivated. You want them to be in an engaging work environment. But we know that's not good enough. Employees need to be supported by strong leadership in the organization. Employees need to have confidence in their senior and immediate managers. There needs to be a kind of atmosphere of openness and trust in teams. And their immediate managers, of course, play a big role in making sure that there is work-life balance, that employees feel rewarded, recognized, and valued. So leadership plays an extremely critical component from a high-performing organization perspective. The other thing that we see is that if employees are not familiar with goals and strategies, if they don't quite understand how what they are doing can contribute with their own work, then there is a disconnect between what employees are setting out to do and what is then organizational goal and strategy. So getting and communicating the goals and strategy and employees to understand truly how they are contributing to that work, I think is kind of a third critical aspect. And finally, and I'll talk a bit more about it, from an internal experience perspective, there has to be a good cooperation within and between teams. I think more and more we are working remotely. We are working across time zones. We are working across offices in different locations. And therefore, this aspect of cooperation, having the right authority, all of these become extremely critical factors. Yeah. So from a customer experience perspective, there are so many things that an engaged and empowered employees can have and play such an important role, right? One is, we do a lot of customers feedback, structured, unstructured surveys, NPS, and so on. And of course, that's a supremely critical thing to capture customer feedback from customers directly. But at the same time, and I don't think organizations do enough of this, but I'm happy to stand corrected, that employees are such a great source of understanding end customer expectations and needs, right? Your frontline staff, whether it is at the store or whether it's call center or digital chat and so on, are constantly in touch with your customers for service requests, for complaints, for issues, and they have a fantastic understanding of customer expectations and needs. And I don't know whether we tap into it enough, but I would suggest that we should do a lot more of that. The second thing, of course, is that employees, when you get the feedback through a survey mechanism or through complaints or through social media or any channel, employees need to be empowered to close the loop fast, i.e., call back the customer, connect with the customer, and prevent issues from spiraling, and make sure that customers are, yes, they have an issue, but if we solve it, we know that customers are probably going to be happier than if the issue is not solved. So the second bit is very important. Close the loop fast by having a one-on-one conversation with that specific customer who had an issue. The third aspect is there are, of course, CX platforms like QuestionPro, where you're able to look at feedback and you're also able to collect what are the root causes that you see happening consistently across all the feedback that you're getting, right? So you're looking at things like, is it a people issue? Is it a process issue? Is it a policy issue? What is the core issue that's happening as we get the customer feedback? This allows you to start working out short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions. Again, a critical thing. For your employees, of course, can be part of agile teams to innovate, test new ideas, and constantly learn. as it happened, from March of last year, a lot of organizations had to adapt to the new normal in terms of working from home, remote working, customer experience, customer delivery. Things changed substantially, right? So that's a huge thing. And then, of course, and this is probably my favorite, I get the feeling that there is just too much of this. I'm part of this CX department. To me, everyone in the organization is accountable for customer experience. Doesn't matter who you are and where you are. And I guess the challenge is that if everyone in the organization doesn't truly understand how they're contributing to CX, then that's where potentially a disconnect is. And I'm sure all of you have heard of this kind of famous incident, I believe, where someone asked a janitor at NASA as to what did he think his or her role was. And his proud answer was putting a man on the moon. Yeah. So that is so powerful, right? You're not going by the physical job description. He took it to heart that it was about putting a man on the moon. Yeah. And that's so powerful. So I think if we can avoid people thinking in silos and that it's only a CX department that has to do something, and all the organizations are accountable, responsible, or influence in some way in CX, I think the organizations will truly become customer-centric. So with that, a small case study at Kantar, we had done face this issue that a client of ours said, we are doing everything when it comes to customer experience. We have improved our product services. We have renovated our branches. We have introduced digital mobile app, online banking. We have done lots of things over this period of time, yet our CX scores are declining. Yeah, so that was the kind of key need of this client. So one of the things that when we had done work over the past so many years, we realized that there's a nice, strong correlation between employee engagement, specifically employee motivation and customer experience. And there is a lag effect in that engaged and motivated employees in the year 2020, you are seeing a very, I would say, very decently high correlation of 0.26 with customer experience in year 2. Now, for the mathematics fans, if 0.26 looks low, it is not, because obviously the customer experience teams and the CEOs and CMOs need to be doing a lot more things to drive customer experience. But just one factor, employee engagement, is having such a great impact on customer experience. So that was quite an interesting kind of insight that we got. The other thing that we realized is that motivation levels of senior management and client-facing functions had a far greater impact on end customer experience than motivation levels of internal functions. Yeah. So you can see that there's a 0.44 and a 0.34 correlation between senior management and client-facing staff versus end customer experience. No, but of course, it is misleading to think that therefore employee experience for internal functions is not required. So let me correct that perception. But this is nice because it showed that, yes, we and many of us in kind of frontline roles, we had to be motivated because, believe it or not, our moods and our motivation levels will reflect in the way we interact with end customers, end clients, and even with each other, right? So that's one important thing. But what we also saw that was that when we did an internal kind of departmental survey on what I call internal customer experience or IX, the frontline staff were not actually as happy with internal functions when it came to internal support, right? Therefore, if your internal support functions are not motivated, guess what? They are not going to be as motivated to deliver internally. And I don't like the word internally because I believe that everyone is contributing to CX, whether it's internal or external. But the fact is that if enablement functions are not motivated enough, in turn, they're not going to do the best they can, and therefore end customer experience is going to be impacted one way or the other. And therefore, a quick summary, if employees are not motivated, of course, it's going to impact CX, particularly the senior and the frontline staff. But if internal support functions are not motivated, it's going to impact how the frontline staff can deliver to the end customer experience. And to me, therefore, this is a fascinating subject that CX, EX, and IX are all linked. And I don't think we should just separate it out from a customer experience perspective. And we need to keep monitoring all of these things. So apart from CX, I think we need to look at employee experience clearly, but please also look at internal experience at least once a year. So you have a good sense of, is everyone feeling that we are out to support each other, we are out to collaborate with each other? Because if that is not the case, it's going to be a challenge. Yeah. Now, all my panelists and the speakers before have talked about it, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but absolutely, this is what we see, that in the new normal, these factors have become even more important. Employee health and well-being was always important, but I think given the work and personal stress that COVID has created, this is supremely critical. So making sure that you have plans in place in your organization on health and well-being, not surveys only, but what are you doing about it is an important thing. Showing empathy for people, your customers and employees, as many organizations are doing, is important. And if you go back to Maslow's hierarchy, I think even the basic stuff like safety and hygiene, whether for us as employees or as customers, is still a very important thing. So I do have my mask in my office, and I keep getting the times I don't wear mask and go too close to people. I do have my admin guy chasing me. And this is an important thing, right? Because people are still uncertain about COVID and how you get impacted and infected. So safety and hygiene, please do keep in mind. The other thing is, as business leaders, all of you and all of us need to celebrate what our staff are doing a lot more, I think, especially for clients who are retailers, banks, telcos, whoever, government organizations. You have frontline staff who are at greater risk when they're interacting with other people, when they're at shopping malls or supermarkets or customer service centers. And we as customers appreciate what employees are doing. We give our gratitude to staff. But I think if this is reinforced by what we as leaders can do, I think it helps a lot more in staff motivation. A financial service company in US, for example, I mean, I think a lot of us are doing it. They do have frequent surveys to understand how is staff coping with the current situation, what more can be done, how do we empower employees to kind of make decisions, solve problems, and so on. So I guess I'm running out of time. So I would love to, actually, that's the last slide. Thanks, Sindhu, for jumping in. I love this quote, and I don't know whether there's any connection with what I spoke. So I'm just putting the quote because I love it. But it's a hard thing, right? Getting delightful customer experience, getting delightful employee experience, or getting delightful internal experience is hard. And therefore, we delight in the beauty of butterfly, but we rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. And I think we all have to work hard. It's not easy, but hopefully you got enough food for thought. And I will pause with that for now. Thanks, Sindhu.
Thank you so much, Satish. It was very, very insightful, certainly for becoming, going down or having the vision or mission to become a customer-centric company. These are all elements that are extremely important. And I like how you amalgamated everything that we spoke about into this conversation. There is just one question that I see in terms of what kind of, percentage should we expect from employee satisfaction surveys? And I know everyone looks at this differently, so I would love for you to take that. I'm going to give you a quick minute before we move on to the next conversation.
Sure. Sorry, Cindy, if you could repeat the question. So what is the employee?
Overall, the employee satisfaction survey, when you run that, what's the expected percentage, I'm assuming, of the response rate?
Okay, response rate. Okay. So we have seen, it does depend on the nature of employees. So for organizations, large organizations where we have done employees feedback, there are blue collar workers, there are white collar workers. So sometimes the logistics of doing the survey is quite tough. But where we tend to work with purely email surveys, our expectation, and at Kantar, we have a kind of leaderboard, and I think everyone gets stressed because of that. So certainly our HR teams. And I think we achieve more than 90% within Kantar. But I would say you should ideally get to at least 60 to 70%. Because if you don't get to 60 to 70%, then I think there's a message also that your employees and our employees are sending out to us by not participating in the survey. That could also be a symptom of something else. Yeah?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Satish.